This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israeli ambassador to the UN Danny Danon talks to CBN News about the many threats facing the state of Israel. Plus, Israel's revolution in emergency medical response saves lives. They plan to take their solution around the world and take a walk on the Israel Trail and see the country from north to south. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East over the American pastor Andrew Brunson. On July 18th, a Turkish court refused to release Brunson once again. And as Gary Lane reports, it pits the U.S. Trump administration against Turkish President Recep Erdogan.
It was the third hearing for the 50-year-old North Carolina pastor, and it ended in another disappointment. That's because many people thought Andrew Brunson would be freed from prison. He has spent 20 months behind Turkish bars on accusations that he spied on the government and plotted with rebels to overthrow President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in July 2016. For nearly 2 hours during the hearing, former church members testified against Pastor Brunson, making vague, unsubstantiated accusations. When the judge asked Brunson to reply to the witnesses, he said, quote, "My faith teaches me to forgive, so I forgive those who testified against me." Only one witness from the defense was allowed to testify. The U.S. government expressed concern about the court's decision.
I have read the indictment. I have attended 3 hearings. I don't believe that there is any indication that Pastor Brunson is guilty of any sort of criminal or terrorist activity.
The Trump administration and members of Congress have been pressuring Turkey to release the pastor. On Wednesday, President Trump expressed displeasure, tweeting, "A total disgrace that Turkey will not release respected U.S. pastor Andrew Brunson from prison. He's been held hostage far too long. Erdogan should do something to free this wonderful Christian husband and father. He has done nothing wrong, and his family needs him." Cece Heil of the American Center for Law and Justice says, immediately after the court decision, the Trump administration and members of Congress began working again diplomatically to help free Brunson.
It's a devastating blow, so I would just, pray for encouragement for Pastor Brunson and for his family, because they suffer the same.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
As the representative from the ACLJ encouraged, please pray for the soon release of Pastor Andrew Brunson. Well, on another diplomatic front, the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, defends the Jewish state at the world body. Again, here's CBN's Gary Lane talking with the ambassador about the many threats Israel faces in Israel, the Middle East, and around the world.
Relations between Israel and Russia have improved. There's a good relationship between Bibi Netanyahu, your prime minister, and also Vladimir Putin. So what has the difference been? How has that changed Israel and the Middle East, having a better relationship with Russia?
For us, it's important to have a strong relationship with everybody. The U.S. is the strongest ally. It will always will be our strongest ally. I feel it every day at the UN, working with Ambassador Haley. But it's important for us to speak also with the Russians, mainly about Syria, because we know that the Iranians, they want to stay in Syria. They want to take over Syria. We think it will be a threat not only for Israel, but also for other countries in the region, and we should not allow the Iranians to take over Syria. Look what happened in Lebanon. Today, the Iranians control Lebanon. They have the Hezbollah forces next to our border. We don't want to have a similar reality in the border with Syria. This is the message that Prime Minister Netanyahu delivered to Mr. Putin.
So a lot of suffering in 6.5 years in Syria. How do we bring about the end of that war? Is Russia the key? What's the key to end it?
First, I agree with you. We look at the pictures, we see the devastation. We are trying to help people in Syria. And I took a delegation of ambassadors with me to Israel, and we met with Syrian refugees. And they were shocked to hear the refugees speaking about Jews in Israel supporting Muslims in Syria. So we do whatever we can, and we hope that there will be some kind of stability in Syria. But at the same time, we don't want the Iranian to be next to our border.
The U.S. has enacted legislation, I think, back in December called the Taylor Force Act. And what that did is it ended the pay to slay. U.S. taxpayer support of Palestinians. In turn, there were the Palestinian Authority giving money to terrorists and the families of terrorists. We ended that. What's the effort like getting other countries to follow suit?
This is very important. We need to understand it. When you have the Palestinian Authority, which is a kind of a government, takes funds from the government and pay terrorists to kill innocent Israelis a monthly salary. It can be up to $3,000 a month for life. And they're taking international aid support and use that money to pay the families of terrorists. I think it was a very important legislation. In Israel, we have a similar legislation, and we saw Australia joining the US, and hopefully other countries will do the same. We encourage people to support humanitarian projects, but you should not support the culture of hate of the Palestinians.
Are you optimistic about that, or?
I am, but we have to listen to the Palestinians. They say it very clearly. Despite all the legislations, we will continue to pay salaries to terrorists. Nevertheless, what will be the outcome? So they will take funds from other projects, schools, infrastructure, and they will divert them into paying salaries for terrorists. This is a bad message for the next generation of Palestinians growing up today in Judea and Samaria.
You know, when I met you in New York earlier this year, you seemed very like you're an optimist. You seem very optimistic about the future and the prospects for peace in the Middle East and between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, with all this Gaza situation going on, you know, we saw the rushing of the border and crossing and infiltrating into Israel at the time of the Jerusalem embassy dedication, the U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. Also, we saw the kites, the arson fires that began into Israel as a result of Palestinians sending those kites in. Now, most recently, the rockets. So are you still optimistic? How do you feel about the prospects for peace?
First, you have to be optimistic. You have to be a believer to survive in the United Nations. Yeah. And I'm optimistic because look what we achieved in short 70 years. We had wars, we had terror attacks. But despite all of those attacks and hatred, we built a miracle, a beautiful, thriving democracy in our region. So I think we will continue to do that. But at the same time, we have to make sure we have a strong army. We have to be grateful for our friends in the US standing with Israel, supporting Israel. We need that support because Hamas is not going anywhere. Hezbollah, they will stay there. And Iran is still there. So we will have challenges in the future, but at the same time, we have the capability to face those challenges.
The Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, a representative for Israel, Danny Danon, thank you so much for being with us. Good to see you again. God bless you.
Coming up, join us on the streets of Jerusalem to see firsthand Israel's revolution in emergency medical response that's saving lives. According to one survey, the average time of an ambulance in the United States to reach an emergency is 15 minutes. Imagine if you could reduce that time to 3 minutes or even less. Well, one organization based here in Jerusalem has imagined that, and they believe it can change the world. This is what it's like to ride through the streets of Israel on an ambucycle. It weaves through traffic where an ambulance cannot. CBN News got a first-hand look.
We're riding around with United Hatzalah volunteers here on the streets of Jerusalem where they can respond to a medical emergency or an accident within 90 seconds. It's really the game changer in life-saving emergency medical care.
We think that the largest cause of preventable death in the West is waiting for an ambulance. And United Hatzalah addresses that by getting a volunteer, someone who's trained, equipped, notified, and in the immediate vicinity of the victim to that person within 90 seconds or in a larger geography, 3 minutes.
United Hatzalah, which means rescue, is the inspiration of Eli Beer.
People die every day waiting for help. My dream for United Hatzalah is make sure that no one will ever die from things that they could be saved. Growing up, I decided I want to become a doctor and save lives.
Beer shared that dream on a TED-Med talk that went viral. He said as a young ambulance driver, he often arrived at an emergency too late to save a life and decided to change that.
Together with 15 of my friends, we were all EMTs. We decided, let's protect our neighborhood. So when something like that happens again, we will be there running to the scene a lot before the ambulance.
From 15 friends years ago Today, United Hatzalah has 5,000 volunteers throughout Israel. Their ability to respond to an emergency in 3 minutes or less rests on three things: the ambucycle, volunteers available at a moment's notice, and technology connecting them.
You know, Israelis are good in technology. Every one of us has on his phone, no matter what kind of phone, a GPS technology done by NowForce. And whenever a call comes in, the closest 5 volunteers get the call. And they actually get there really quick and navigated by a traffic navigator to get there and not waste time. And this is a great technology we use all over the country and reduce the response time.
There's another emergency that just went off right now. We're currently in United Hatzalah's National Command and Dispatch Center. And what's happening right behind me here is that volunteers from around the country in the 8 different regions that we broke the country down into are being dispatched to emergencies. We receive about 1,000 emergencies per day.
Then volunteers from each cross-section of Israeli society go into action.
It's really the drive and the desire for people to help save lives. And they come from every walk of life and every population group in Israel. We have volunteers who are Jewish, who are Muslim, who are Christians, who are Druze, who are Bedouin, each working in their communities to save lives.
That's where the ambucycle comes in.
Everything that's in an ambulance is in this ambucycle.
Yeah. So this is like life-saving measures within the first couple of minutes of a
Right.
crisis.
So I get to the call within 3 minutes or less. I arrive, I throw on my jacket, and I immediately start treating. Everything that the ambulance has, except the stretcher, is in this box right here. I have a defibrillator under the seat, and everything else is in this bag.
This life-saving equipment can often get to an emergency sooner than an ambulance. This real-life video shows an ambulance stuck in traffic and an ambucycle weaving its way through. But they exist to complement rather than compete with the ambulance.
Basically, we're there to fill the gap. So until the ambulance arrives, in those first crucial, critical minutes, we have help is on scene. Help has arrived, we are stabilizing, and by the time the ambulance comes, he is ready for transport to the hospital. And getting there in 90 seconds is the game changer in EMS worldwide.
That time gap can mean life or death.
I can tell you every second counts, and if you wait 2 more seconds for someone who has no oxygen for more than 6 or 7 minutes, there's no chance of saving that person. And if you do save him, that person will have damage for the rest of their life and will need assistance. So by having thousands of volunteers, think about it, it's like Uber, everywhere.
Gavi Friedson has responded to more than 9,000 emergency calls. Now he's in the U.S. to spread the news about this revolution in emergency response.
I meet with police chiefs or fire chiefs, other medical professionals, even mayors of the city, to really try to understand what it is that we do, what we've accomplished, and that they can get it done too.
Friedson believes an untapped U.S. labor force is just waiting for the opportunity to save lives.
I tell them we have so many veterans who are medics, who are probably at home, or even retired doctors and physicians that, you know, it's possible that they're trained, they want to help, they just need that, you know, someone that can really lift them off and get that ball rolling.
The revolutionary model is now rolling in Jersey City and 5 other countries.
This is simply an amazing revolution. Every minute, every other minute during the day, someone is leaving his job, is leaving his home, is leaving his holiday just to go save someone who he doesn't even know and get there within 2 minutes or less and save his life.
United Hatzalah has responded to more than 2.5 million calls in its history. The dream is to take it worldwide.
The global vision is people shouldn't die waiting for ambulances. Very simple.
Nothing like this exists anywhere else in the world. It's an Israeli innovation and an Israeli invention that it's our dream is to bring it to everybody else so that victims of heart attacks and strokes and choking and bleeding have the same chance of life in Jersey City, in Omaha, Nebraska, in Panama and Mexico as they do in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
Bear sees it as another way Israel wants to help beyond its borders.
This is a tikkun olam. This is a gift to the world. We are light over the nations in terms of many things, technology. No one realized that in medicine, fast response, Israel's the fastest in the world, and we could share this with everyone. Anyone who wants to learn from us, we're there for them.
It all started in Israel. It works comprehensively in Israel. It's our goal to bring this around the world and to make it Israel's gift, a light unto the nations.
We're here for the mission of God. If we're good to each other, God will be good to us, and that's why we're here. United Hatzalah is an example of goodness, of ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Be good to the other the same way you want the others to be good to you. And that's our mission.
Up next, walk the Israel Trail and see the country from the sea to the mountains to the desert when we come back. You may have heard of the Appalachian Trail in the United States or the Camino de Santiago in Spain. These are two of the great walking trails in the world. But did you ever hear about the Israel Trail? It goes all the way from Israel's northern border to the south in Eilat on the Red Sea. Recently, I talked with someone who walked that trail and wrote a book describing his odyssey. Okay, Aryeh Green, great to be with you here in Sataf with a beautiful background behind us.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Chris.
You've written a book called My Israel Trail, Finding Peace in the Promised Land. Why did you write the book?
I hiked the Israel Trail, 600 miles from the south of Israel on the Red Sea, the Gulf of Eilat, up to the border with Lebanon, through these Jerusalem hills. And I hiked it in 8 weeks, all alone, with a 50-pound pack on my back. At age 51, and I hiked it following a very difficult, traumatic period in my life, getting over my divorce. And the hike itself and the lessons I learned on the hike, the physical lessons of learning how to do this sort of a trek, which I had never done before, helped me to move on with my life. It suddenly occurred to me that maybe some of these things that I had learned, while there weren't necessarily any great discoveries, but putting them together in a certain way, that it helped me to meet the challenges that I was facing, might be of interest to others and might be able to help others facing their own personal challenges. That's when I decided to write the book, and I also wanted to share the experience. I mean, it's just the phenomenal, exhilarating experience of walking the land of Israel is something that I would imagine many people who are interested in Israel perhaps have never been able to visit or always wanted to, or even if they've visited, they've never necessarily walked the land.
For those that love Israel and appreciate Israel, how would you describe what it's like to walk the land from north to south?
First of all, that's what I wrote the book for, to describe all of the unique features of hiking the land. But the truth is, nothing compares to hiking the land of Israel. And this is true for me as a Jew, walking literally in the footsteps of our prophets, walking step by step, kilometer by kilometer, mile by mile through our ancestral homeland was for me an incredible way of connecting with our people, our history, our land, and the people that I met actually on the trail and our shared destiny. And it's true, I think, Christian or otherwise, other people who have a connection to the land of Israel where Jesus walked could also feel the same.
So 42 days, 600 miles. You spent a lot of time by yourself, and what was that whole experience like to be on the biblical trail, the land of the patriarchs as well?
It's a funny combination. I was getting over my divorce. First 3 weeks in the desert, when literally you're not just all alone, but you're surrounded by almost nothingness, as it were. It leaves a lot of time for contemplation, for reflection, and it was very healing.
Yeah. There are a lot of places, people in the Bible that were alone in the desert. I think Moses was one. Jesus certainly was one. And I think a lot of people could identify with a crisis that you went through. What were the lessons that you learned when you were there on the trail?
Well, one of them is that humility, that sense of modesty, acknowledging our place in the universe. Another one was a great sense of acceptance. Another aspect of the lessons that I learned was forgiveness. Forgiveness of myself, of the mistakes I had made in my life, in the relationship. Forgiveness of my former wife, of course, for the decision that she took. Gratitude was another. Appreciating the amazingly beautiful things that we have in our life. So grateful to my children and my friends and the rest of my family for the support they gave me through this difficult time, but also just in general, how lucky I am to have the friends and the family that I have. Incredible gratitude to be able to be living in this miraculous age of the return of our Jewish people to our ancestral homeland and being part of this experience in the renewed sovereignty of the Jews here. There was so much that I had to be grateful for. Every day I was grateful for the experience of being able to hike the land of Israel. I started every day with our traditional Jewish prayer upon waking, Modeh ani lifanecha. I am thankful before you, God, for all of the miracles in my life. And I would not just say this in my prayers in the morning, but it would be the first song that I sang as I started to walk with my 50-pound pack. Did I mention I had a 50-pound pack on my back?
For those that are going to be reading this book, what do you want for them to take
after they read this book?
Well, I would say, first of all, come and hike the Israel Trail. Take a half a day or take a day and hike parts of the Israel Trail. So the first thing I would want somebody taking away from my book is, having enjoyed the vicarious experience of walking vicariously with me through the land, to have an appreciation for the beauty of Israel and the history and our connection to it. And hopefully that would lead to a desire to visit.
Well, Aryeh Green, great to be with you, and thanks for writing such a book and being vulnerable and opening your heart and putting it down here on paper so people can enjoy the experience and learn from the lessons. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chris.
Up next, find out about a unique tour here in Israel through the eyes of a reporter. There's also an opportunity later this year to come to Israel. It's called Israel Through the Eyes of a Reporter. Take a look. Hello, I'm Chris Mitchell, and I wanted to invite you to the Israel Through the Eyes of a Reporter tour this November 30th to December 9th, 2018. I've been reporting from Israel for nearly 20 years, and I want to share some of those insights and experiences I've had during that time. We'll have daily briefings on the current situation and discuss the geopolitical developments in the area, many of them with prophetic implications. And we'll also walk in the footsteps of Jesus and visit places like the Mount of Beatitudes, Capernaum, and take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. And we'll come here to Jerusalem and see the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, and the Garden of Gethsemane. The saying goes, when you come to Israel, you'll never be the same. And my wife says that before you come to Israel, reading the Bible is like reading it in black and white, but after you come here, it's like reading it in color. So join me here November 30th to December 9th for the trip of a lifetime. I look forward to seeing you here in Jerusalem. Well, I hope you'll consider coming here to Israel later this year. That's it for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.